Okay, let's get into it. So today's webinar is how to set up your Amazon bookkeeping in QuickBooks Online. So on the webinar today, we've got me. So my name's Amy. I'm Product Marketing Manager at A2X, and we're also delighted to have Michele, the Cozy Bookkeeper, here.
Hey everybody, my name is Michele. I am the founder and CEO of the Cozy Bookkeeper. And the reason why I call it the Cozy Bookkeeper is because many people, they're afraid of their bookkeeping. They're afraid of getting into their numbers. So my tagline is let's get cozy with your books. So I specialize in e-commerce. I have been a bookkeeper for over 30 years. I'm actually going on 33 years now. And I specialize in Amazon sellers. I'm certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor. I have the advanced certification, and I'm also certified in A2X. And I help you. And I also, in addition to specializing in e-commerce, I can do pretty much any other books for any other company. So yeah, I tailor it to you and your budget.
Love it. How did you come to specialize in e-commerce, Michele?
Well, I started, doing the side gigs myself, and I was doing like Shopify, and then I'm like, oh, I want to try Amazon. And then as I was getting into Amazon, I realized, I was in like some Amazon groups. I realized there's a lot of people that need help. And so they were asking a lot of bookkeeping type questions. So I started helping them and answering them. And then one of the coaches reached out to me and says, hey, do you want to, do you want to do a webinar with us and get your word out there and, help our students? I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Because I was a student myself. But part of it too is when I was doing it, I realized there's definitely a need for this because Amazon, out of all the e-commerce, Amazon to me was so much more complicated than just your brick and mortar store. I mean, as you'll see as we go through the webinar, there's a lot of nuances to Amazon bookkeeping. So I started getting into it more and more, and learning more and more about it. So I decided I'm going to specialize in this. And that's when I found you, A2X, and started learning the ropes and getting more and more into learning all the different nuances of all the income and expenses that go into running an Amazon business.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a great way to get into a niche or a specialization when you actually thoroughly understand the problem, having sort of been through it yourself. So love that.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so what we're going to cover today. So first of all, we're going to start by understanding Amazon accounting and bookkeeping, and we'll break down an Amazon settlement. We'll then have a quick look at how A2X can help with Amazon bookkeeping, and then we'll get into probably the meatier part of the presentation where we'll go through a step-by-step guide of setting up Amazon bookkeeping in QuickBooks Online. From there, we'll identify a few of the complexities that there are with Amazon accounting and when you're getting set up. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A as a chance to answer your questions. So yeah, as I say, pop them in the chat. So we've got them ready for the end. Brilliant. So I'll hand over to you, Michele, to start talking about understanding Amazon accounting and bookkeeping.
Yeah. So one of the analogies I came up with was, is looking at your Amazon payout is kind of like an iceberg. You only see the money that goes into your bank account. And, like an iceberg, there's so much underneath. And that's the part you really don't see unless you're diving in deeper. So, the money that you get from Amazon into your bank account, that's not your sales. And I would not classify that as sales directly. There's so much more going underneath. So this is where I come in. This is where A2X comes in. So the next slides, we're definitely going to be able to see what goes on behind the scenes. So we're going to go through the breakdown of an Amazon payout. Obviously, you have your gross sales, your revenue, your product sales, you have shipping revenue, gift wrap charges. You have returns and refunds, restocking fees, refund of administration fees. You also have promotions and discounts, which come off of your revenue, such as promotional rebates and coupon redemptions. And then you also have your Amazon fees, whether it's FBA fees or FBM fees. You have those commissions that are getting paid to Amazon. So it's like the referral fees, FBA fees for storage, packing, shipping. You have variable closing fees, because trust me, Amazon's going to ding you for everything they can. No offense to Amazon, but this is where they make money as well. There's a bunch of other fees involved, such as high volume listing fees, refund of administrations. You've got other adjustments such as inventory, chargeback disputes, and then there's account level reserves, because let's say you sell, let's just say for an example, you sell $10,000 in a period of time. Amazon's not going to give all that money to you right away. They're going to hold some of that back in case of adjustments, reimbursements, and things like that. So there's going to be a reserve level, account, which is going to be a balance sheet item. And that will get paid out to you at a later time. Then you have shipping and handling costs, label costs, because, when you go through and you start shipping, especially FBM, you can print out your shipping label for your customer and Amazon will deduct it right there. So you don't have to pay out of pocket right away, but that'll definitely be deducted.
There's certainly, I was just actually going to ask a question. So there's certainly quite a lot of transactions. Do you find that when you're talking to customers about this, there's some that they had no knowledge of, or they weren't aware of, or
No, they didn't know, and they didn't know about the reserve account either. They're like, well, why am I not getting my money? Well, they're not going to give you everything right away. They're going to definitely hold some of that back, and, in the event of refunds and chargebacks and things like that. Yeah, so and at the same time, if you owe them money, they're going to take it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a service that's really convenient, but there's a lot that goes into it, as we can see.
Yeah, there is a lot that goes into it. So it's not just about selling, shipping, Amazon fee, the FBM or FBA fee. There's a lot more that goes into it. And then taxes, because it's a third party merchant, they're going to collect and remit sales tax on your behalf. But, and that's a whole separate animal.
That comes up a lot. I think people often assume that if their tax is being collected, it's probably been paid. But as I understand it, they still have to make sure that it's correct. And there's some cases where it's paid and some people that sometimes it's not.
Yeah, they still have to go through and report it to their state, based on their sales tax returns and when they're obligated to do it, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annually. Yeah, they still have to report the revenue. They just don't, for the most part, don't have to pay it.
Yeah, there's a lot to know. I can imagine just being a seller, jumping in and trying to understand this. It's a lot to get your head around.
Yeah, and it's really hard for people to wrap their head around, because when someone starts selling on Amazon or pretty much starting any business, the last thing they think about is the bookkeeping. And then, come year end, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get all this together. And then they're 100%. Pulling their hair out and they're like, I don't know where to get my numbers. But the nice thing is if, you set it up on QuickBooks, get A2X going, the nice thing is when you do integrate A2X with Amazon or with QuickBooks, you can automate it.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Yep.
Awesome. So another analogy that we use quite a bit is this one you can see here. So as we've kind of covered, there's a lot that goes into an Amazon payout. So If you are just setting up and you see this deposit in your bank account, the money being paid to you from Amazon, a really easy mistake to make is just to assume that that whole amount is your sales. So that's money that's come to you as income. The problem is, as Michelle's just explained, there's a whole bunch that goes into that Amazon settlement that you receive. So we can see here in the table on the right there, although $24,772 was paid into the bank account, that was not the sales amount. We can see that the sales amount was actually $35,385, but there's been a whole bunch of transactions that are being taken away or added back in, so shipping and fees and things like that, all the transactions which has gone through, that make up that total amount. The other thing that we haven't actually touched on yet that can make Amazon really complicated is sellers only get paid every 2 weeks. So you might have a deposit in your bank account that could be in the first week of August, and that covers transactions for August and July. So that can make it really complicated as well, because you have to try and figure out what portion of that sales was in which particular month, especially if it's on a month end. So the good news is, obviously, as we've described, Amazon accounting is really complicated, but that's the whole reason why A2X exists. So A2X is an e-commerce accounting app designed to solve this difficult problem. So how A2X works is you come in and you set up A2X, and Michelle's going to talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. But what it does is it starts pulling in the raw data from Amazon. It then starts to categorize that data into the different transaction types. So it starts to split out things like sales, fees, refunds, taxes. And then it's going to create you a really nice journal entry that'll be ready to be posted through to QuickBooks. So you can see here, there's an example of the journal entry, and you can see that A2X has created a summary. So you can see here, this is similar to what we were seeing on one of the previous slides of the really nice organized data. So you can see that A2X will create one entry, and that will cover the total amount that was sales, the total amount that was shipping, all of the different transaction types that were included in that settlement that you've been paid for. The other thing A2X will do is it will split it into the right time period. So in the example that I mentioned before, if it covers a month end, then A2X will actually create 2 entries for you, one for the July portion and one for the August portion. And the total of those 2 entries will match to what you've been paid. So then once you've got this data coming through and you're all set up into A2X, you can send through that entry into your QuickBooks. So a really good benefit with A2X is it's got one-click reconciliation. So rather than just being a data syncing tool, A2X actually reconciles the payout that you've received. So you'll see a deposit in your bank account, that money come in from Amazon, and then you'll see the nice match next to it in your banking screen from A2X. So all you then need to do is match it. Now, if this is sounding a little bit unfamiliar, the great news is Michelle's going to go through getting all of this set up in a bit more detail in a moment. But essentially what A2X will do is it will take the data from Amazon, it will organize it, create a really nice summary, and then post it through to your QuickBooks, where you can then account for the right transactions. And the whole purpose of this is so that you can then run the financial statements that you need. So when you know your data is accurate, it's really nice and clean, and it's posted through to your accounting software. You can then run the statements you need, such as a profit and loss or a balance sheet, to see how your business is going, and then make informed decisions for your business. Brilliant. Okay, so let's go through the step-by-step guide of getting set up for Amazon accounting and QuickBooks Online.
Yeah. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to create your QuickBooks Online account. So you come up with your username and password, and QuickBooks makes it fairly easy to go through the setup process, because then the next step would be to customize your company's settings. You go through, you put your name, address, phone number, tax ID number in. Then you can add, whether or not you're, C Corp, S Corp, sole proprietor, LLC, partnership, things like that. And then it asks you, what do you want to do? So you just go through and answer the questions. It's fairly straightforward. And then once everything is set up there, you want to connect your bank and credit card accounts. Something to keep in mind with connecting bank and credit cards is the time period, because sometimes it'll ask you how far back you want to go. Some banks and credit cards don't like going back that far. So be mindful. A lot of the bigger banks are really good about going back a year or two. And same with the credit cards, like Amex is really good with that. Chase Inc. is really good with that. I mean, I'm not endorsing these, but I'm just giving examples because these are common in the United States. But like, for example, Capital One Spark only goes back a few months. So if you do have entries that need to come in that aren't being pulled in, there are other ways to get that information pulled into QuickBooks. And then after you bring in your transactions, you're going to want to categorize them and post them. But in order to do that, you need to set up your chart of accounts as well. And that's where you go through and have the transactions get posted to the proper accounts, whether it's the balance sheet or the profit and loss.
Just might ask a couple of
Oh,
questions if
sure.
it's okay. So when you're getting set up on QuickBooks Online, I know that there's a few different like plans or products that you can choose from. Is there
Yes.
one that you'd recommend?
Usually if you're just starting out with Amazon, you don't need a huge subscription. So I just recommend the basic subscription that's now, you get a 30-day free trial, and then you have the option of doing like $17.50 a month, or it's $35 afterwards. So it's the basic plan. You don't need anything more than that right now, because if it's just going to be you, then that's all you need. If you are going to have a couple other people as users, then you are going to need a higher subscription plan. Or if you're going to have payroll and things like that, then it's, more money on the subscription plan.
Nice. Something I think we often get asked about is multi-currency, and I think from memory that's only on the more advanced plans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, but a lot of sellers, when they start out like, well, here in the US, just in the US. And I primarily work with a lot of startups that are just US based. And then, if they want to branch out, they're going to obviously have to increase their subscription so they can do the multi-currency. And also it'll increase the subscription level for A2X as well.
Got it. Okay. Customizing your company settings. I know when I'm setting up software, what I often do is just kind of pop the information in there in a hurry with the intention to come back. Is it okay to do that? Or I guess my main question was what information is really important to get right from the get-go?
Actually, that's the beauty of QuickBooks. You don't really have to have everything perfect right away. Even if you just wanted to get in there quickly, just answer it's a couple of questions and just get right to it. That's usually what I do. When I help you set up, we get right to it so we can bring in the credit card and bank transactions. Because a lot of times when I have a setup, it's a 2-hour call where I actually do everything for you. And then we can go back later and enter. I actually put the chart of accounts in for you. I walk you through the process of connecting, A2X to your Seller Central and A2X to QuickBooks. Like, I walk my clients through step by step. And I even post the transactions for them in the proper categories. Now, if they want to do this themselves afterwards, they are more than welcome to. But the nice thing with QuickBooks is you can make mistakes, but you can also undo them. Sometimes it's a quick undoing, sometimes it's not. So that's why if potential clients want to work with me, I try to get them in before even starting QuickBooks. I tell them, don't even do this. I'll set you up on QuickBooks. The only thing you have to do is, once you get your invitation, you put your username and password in, and then wait for our Zoom call. And then I walk you through everything, so it's not so daunting.
Love it. I know our customer success team would be very happy to hear that, because in some cases we get people coming through to us and they've set something up and maybe used a different tool and they've got a whole lot of information in there and it gets really messy. So I think sometimes it's recommended that they start fresh. So I think
I do recommend starting fresh. And it's always great when you start from the beginning, because you don't want to wait till year end. You don't want to wait till tax time, because then you're going to be pulling your hair out. And then, I get busy. I get really busy during tax time. So,
Okay.
yeah, definitely something you don't want to wait on. You want to start your bookkeeping as soon as possible. When I work with clients, A2X is not an option. It's mandatory. It's like QuickBooks, A2X, mandatory. And then, the nice thing with, A2X is the higher subscription levels also have, your cost of goods sold, which is another problem area. I, yeah, I set someone up the other night, and he was just like at the end of the call, like, oh my gosh, this would have taken me weeks to figure out.
I bet. I mean, I feel like if I was in that position, a lot of people get into business because they have a passion for a product or they're doing it as a side hustle. So
Mhm.
accounting's often not the first thing that they think about. So
No,
being
not at
able to
all.
talk to someone that understands it and can take care of it would be ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, at the end of the day, you want to ask yourself, do I want to do this? Do I want to take the time and figure out and learn this stuff? Or do I just want to hire someone? Because, bookkeeping is not, or, these people say bookkeeping is not my wheelhouse, but do you want to take the time to do it? Wouldn't you rather work on your business? That's where I come in. I love it. This is what I do.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. I did also have one other question. So you talked about connecting the bank accounts and credit cards. What if they don't have a business bank account set up already? Because I can imagine there's probably some sellers that haven't gotten that far or might be just getting paid into a personal account. I can imagine that might be a little bit of a nightmare for an accountant or bookkeeper. So what do you sort of
Yes.
suggest?
Yeah. So one thing I did for the students in the EDU program, like that I work with, and in my Discord, is I have a Google sheet that I kind of set up for them, where it's like, okay, if you are spending money on business expenses that are coming out of your personal accounts, your personal checking, credit cards, put each transaction in, um, the date, what it is, and how much it was. And then I can go and put that in later, as an owner investment, which is really nice. But I always recommend, please get a business credit card, please get a business bank account. With a single member LLC, it is possible to have, I know that you're not going to be able to get business credit cards right away. I mean, if you are a single member LLC, you can get a business bank account right away. But with the credit cards, it's a little more difficult. It is okay to have a personal credit card as long as you're using it exclusively for business. Something I always tell my clients, keep personal and business transactions as separate as possible, because you really don't want to lose out on potential deductions for expenses. And a lot of times, if someone does use their personal account, even if they have business accounts set up, they forget. They forget, and then they lose track of it. And then later on, they're like, oh my gosh, I spent all this money out of my personal account. I forgot about it. So that is definitely something you want to be mindful of, that once you do get your business accounts, keep using that only. If you need to fund it, it's totally okay to put money into your business accounts. But don't be like, well, I don't have money in my business account, so I'm just going to go use my personal credit card. Don't do that.
Nice. What I'm hearing is it's good to get set up with great processes right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And then it avoids so much more, so many complications later.
Nice. All right, let's take a look at the next steps.
Right. So once all that is set up, the next thing you're going to want to do is you want to connect A2X to your Seller Central account. So when you start your A2X account, I like using the Intuit login information. That way you don't have to worry about another login information. It'll connect to your QuickBooks much easier. So you want to connect A2X to your Seller Central account, and A2X walks you through this. You just go through, you know, answer the questions, do the same thing. And then once it's connected, you're going to want to link your A2X to your QuickBooks account. And then once those are connected, then you're going to map it. And this is a very important step. You're going to want to make sure everything is mapped correctly to the chart of accounts in QuickBooks, whether you use auto mapping or you go in there and you do it one by one yourself. Because I've seen like 100 different transaction, you know, lines in A2X. So that's something to consider. And then once all these are connected and you pick a subscription plan, you gotta look at the subscription plans for A2X, whether it's basic, like the $29 a month, where it's up to 200 sales per month, or even if you go past that, then you have to level up. You're going to want to import and then reconcile those transactions. And then once those transactions are pulled in, one thing I do is when we bring in the bank transactions in the bank feed in QuickBooks, I don't post the money coming in from Amazon right away. It's like if I see money coming in from Amazon, I leave that there until I set up A2X. That way, once the A2X posts the transactions, the journal entries, it will match those payouts in your bank feed. And then I can go through and match them in QuickBooks. Now, I know it's hard to visualize this, and you know, this can get pretty overwhelming, but when I do it, that I have a system in place, and this is something that I help you with. And I actually do it for you while you're on the Zoom call with me. So you see it, and you see me in action doing this.
How far do you usually go back, Michele? Is there like from a certain date, or does it depend on the customer?
It depends on, you know, the customer. Typically, like, for example, we're in 2024. If they just started this year, we like going back to the beginning. If they have been doing this a while, it depends on if they have filed their tax returns already. Now, if they've already filed, like, for example, 2023 tax returns, I don't touch those years. I will only go back to the beginning of the year.
Got it. And you talked a little bit about the mapping. So it actually relates back to the earlier point number 4 about the accounts and tax chart of accounts that you need. I know that A2X can create sort of the default accounts
Yes.
for you. Do you usually use those? Do you need to create other ones? How does that process work?
I usually start with the defaults, and then I go through and then I take a look. And then once everything's posted, I go through and I look at the transactions in QuickBooks, and I look at the journal entries, and I also analyze the profit and loss statement. So I go through there and I look at each transaction, and I make sure that they are hitting their appropriate accounts. And if I see something that's a little off, I will go back and fix it in QuickBooks, and then I will fix it in A2X as well. I will fix the mapping.
That's a really good point, because we do have the assisted mapping, which technically means you can come in and answer a bunch of questions, and A2X will do the mapping for you. But one thing we do always stress is to get it checked by an accountant or bookkeeper, because there's just so many different facets to businesses, obviously. So we want to make sure that it's appropriate.
Yeah. And then the auto mapping, I mean, it definitely saves time, but I would not use that as the end all be all of, you know, the whole mapping. I definitely go in and look at and make sure. And then, you know, I have my clients print out reports, and then I look and compare, and it's like, are these matching what Amazon is saying in the Amazon reports?
100%. Yeah, we often say they're a good starting point, but yeah, it's good to go through them and make sure they're suited for your business. And also, there might be things you're wanting to see in more detail, or people might be happy to sort of group things up into just one category.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So we've talked about obviously the process, and you've made it sound really nice and easy, especially if someone does it with you. But I know that there's a lot of complexities that go with Amazon. So do you want to just talk to these for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with anything new, there is a learning curve, you know, and it just depending on how tech savvy you are and if you have any bookkeeping knowledge or not. The learning curve can, go from simple to complex. And then you have the complexity of your sales data. It's like, okay, are you selling, how much are you selling? How many different marketplaces are you in? Are you in the US only? Or are you selling other parts of the world? Which also leads to currency conversion. That is another beast. So that can get very complicated as well. And then, integration and mapping issues. A lot of people, they can get hung up on the mapping part. Then you have fees and adjustment. You have your inventory management. It's like, okay, with all this, how am I going to manage my inventory? How am I going to keep track of it? There's cost of goods sold. And again, it goes down to cost management. And then, reconciling the accounts. I always make sure I reconcile the accounts at the end, even the bank accounts. If everything's coming through the bank feed, people are like, why do I need to reconcile? Well, you want to make sure everything that is coming through your bank and credit card accounts are actually coming through QuickBooks and hitting those accounts too. I have come across, I've done reconciliations where I've seen missing transactions, and I'd have to go through and get those transactions from the bank, or they've doubled up on transactions because like a lot of it is connectivity. A lot of banks don't like staying connected to QuickBooks. A lot of the bigger banks are okay, but it's like your little local regional banks sometimes don't, but for the most part, it's not bad. And that's why I reconcile.
So reconciling, that's a process at the end of the month. You go through and check what's in QuickBooks
Yes.
against the statements. Is that right?
Yes. I go through and I look at every balance sheet account, whether it's checking, credit cards, whether you have a loan, and also all the Amazon accounts that are on the balance sheet, your sales tax, your reserve.
It's a really important process, and probably one that if you weren't an accountant or bookkeeper would be easy to overlook, because when you get that nice clean bank account in QuickBooks, it's so easy to say, okay, I'm all done.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely something I do before I finalize any kind of reports is I go through, I reconcile everything. And then I also look at the profit and loss. Again, I make sure that all the the A2X transactions are posted correctly, they're mapped correctly, and they're in line with what the Amazon reports say.
And then you also talked about cost of goods sold and inventory. So that's, I mean, that's a huge part of an online seller. What's usually the process for that? Do you recommend, I mean, I can imagine we could probably do a whole webinar just on that, but do you have any things that you usually see or recommendations?
I usually, yeah, that's the biggest mess that I see as well. Because like I said, A2X is mandatory. I set everyone up on A2X. So we've got that down. That's not a problem. The problems I run into a lot are cost of goods sold, because everyone's like buying, putting it on Amazon. And when I ask them, okay, what was your inventory balance as of this date? And they're like, I have no idea. Like, these are things you need to know. But I do go through and help everyone with that as well. And I am putting a little class together, actually not a little class, big class, that we're gonna go through cost of goods sold. So hopefully within the next few weeks or a month, I'll be posting that in my Discord group. Link will be at the end.
Nice. Yeah, it's one that A2X gets asked about all the time. So we do have a process where we can, if you've got your SKU costs worked out, then A2X can bring those in and post them through to your accounting software. So you are deducting from that inventory asset account. But certainly in terms of keeping track of your costs and calculating your costs, it can be a complicated process.
Yeah, it's very important because, you want to know, it's like, am I making money off this product?
Yeah.
How are my books looking? How's my bottom line?
Totally. We've also seen situations where sellers are looking to get a loan and that can be, if they've got a lot of stock, that can be used as an asset. And so obviously it's valuable as if it hasn't been sold yet, it's still valuable from an accounting perspective.
Right.
So,
yeah. And a lot of people, a lot of, Amazon sellers and other sellers, they don't understand, like, you buy inventory, it's not expensed until you sell it. So when you're buying a lot of inventory, it's going to sit there as an asset on your balance sheet until you sell it. So that is when it gets expensed. So, you're buying all this inventory throughout the year. Don't make the mistake of buying a ton of inventory at the end of the year or end of an accounting period. Most people are on a calendar year. So let's say December, don't go buying a bunch of inventory at the end of December, because that's not going to be expense. That's not an expense until you sell it, and you're not going to sell it till the next year, most likely.
all these things to know, hey? People just trying to get set up and sell on Amazon, and there's all these things they need to know. Awesome. Well, certainly there's a lot to know. So I think on the next page, we've got your contact details, which are very timely, because if you're sitting here listening to this webinar or watching this video and you're understanding some of it, but it's all looking a little bit complicated, then you can absolutely reach out to Michele. So here are her contact details here. And then, Michele, how would you recommend that people get in contact with you?
Well, I mean, I have Linktree. I have a bunch of different links on there. I have my social media posted on there, but Discord is the best way. You can find me. My username's Bean Counter Supreme.
Love it.
Or if you can't find me on Discord, you can always reach out to my email, Michele at thecozybookkeeper.com, and then I can tell you how to get into Discord group. And, I can also get you started, help you get started on this journey, help you get, if you are starting Amazon and you don't have any kind of a mentor, we can get you in contact with mentors, and then there's a lot of other sellers in the group that we all help each other.
So Discord's a bit of like an online community, is that right?
Yeah, Discord is kind of like an online community where we can all communicate with each other, post, I have 3 different channels in there where I have resources, bookkeeping tips, and then a general one where I just post announcements and stuff. But, at some point I do plan on having a paid Discord where I'm going to dive deeper into, helping and doing weekly calls and things like that to help everyone. But right now, my Discord is free.
Nice. I was just about to say, you're a one-stop Amazon accounting shop. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've just before we wrap up and get into some questions, I can see a couple have come through. You can try A2X for free. So A2X does have a free trial. You can come in. So you need to connect your Amazon and connect your QuickBooks. And I think you will get access to the last sort of 3 to 5 settlements that will come into A2X. If you want sort of that new data coming in, then that's when you do need to subscribe. So feel free to jump in and have a try. Definitely reach out to Michele if you're interested in having some support and getting set up. So like Michele said, she can offer a service where she will get A2X and QuickBooks set up for you. And make sure that everything's a nice running order, and probably teach you something about accounting as well. So yeah, that's how.
Even if you are up and running already and you have QuickBooks and A2X and you're just looking for a bookkeeper, I'm available as well.
Okay, well, we'll jump over to the Q&A. So the first question that we have, I might get you to answer this one, Michele. So does the reserve amount account as profit too?
So, okay, so that is a balance sheet account, which means it's not paid out to you right away, but it goes by your sales for that period of time. So let's say you sell $35,000 in the 2-week time period, and then they withhold like 15,000 of that. You don't have to worry about that being considered income, because your income's already going to be recorded with the sales. And A2X splits it out between months. So even if it's at year end, it'll separate out December versus January sales. So you don't have to worry about that. The reserve is just a balance sheet account. This is just kind of like an accounts receivable. It's just money that Amazon owes you, but you've already accounted for the sales.
So the next question that we have is A2X a separate subscription from QuickBooks? So I can answer this. So yeah, it is. So how it works is you have an A2X subscription. As Michele said, they start at $29 per month. And how the A2X subscription works is it depends on the number of orders that you're doing every month. So the $29 a month covers up to 200 orders, and then they just kind of goes up from there. If you're not just selling on Amazon, so say you're selling on Amazon and eBay or Amazon and Shopify, we do have multi-channel plans where you can connect multiple sales channels to one subscription. So yeah, all of the pricing's on our website, so feel free to jump in and find the right plan for you. And then yeah, you would just pay for A2X separately to your QuickBooks subscription. So as Michele mentioned, what did you say the price for QuickBooks was to get started?
It's $35 a month for the basic subscription plan, but you do get a free month. So there's a couple different options. You can get the free 30-day trial, and then you have the option of paying $35 a month after that. But you do get right now they're still running a special where it's 50% off for 3 months, and then it's the full price after that. Or if you pay for a year in advance, it's even more significant discount.
Nice. So lots of pricing options there as well.
Yeah. And one thing to make note of with the A2X subscription, it is 200 sales, not $200, not 200 units. It's the number of sales, because that is that's a question I get a lot too, a lot of confusion around that.
Yeah, and a lot of people won't actually know how many orders they're doing per month. So what you can do is you can actually connect to A2X, and it will, because it captures that data for you, it will be able to give you an idea of how many orders you're doing per month. So we have that free trial, so you can just connect up and then you'll get a bit of an idea. I think there's probably a way in Amazon you can find it as well. Awesome. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have for now. We'll give a few more seconds for people to pop in any other questions that they have. Otherwise, Michele, was there anything? I mean, this has been pretty thorough, but was there anything else you'd add?
Not right now, other than don't wait.
Nice.
Don't wait. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, please reach out to me. Don't try to do this yourself. I'm here to support you. I'm here on this journey with you. Don't look at bookkeeping as an expense. Look at it as an investment. This is something that you need for your business. And, I work with you. I have, really good prices right now.
Nice. We have actually just had one more question slip through. So it said, I just started, no sales yet, looking for products to sell. Do you recommend I still get set up with A2X and QuickBooks now?
If you just started, I would hold off at least a couple of months, because I don't want you to have to pay for subscriptions that you don't need at the moment. The nice thing is that when you're starting off, you're probably going to start off at the basic plan for A2X, and you can go back as far as 3 months. It's still 3 months, right, Amy?
I think so. Yeah, you can still, and on some of the larger plans, you can even go back further than that.
Yeah, and the larger plans go back a year or more. But yeah, when you're just starting out, I would definitely recommend at least starting with A2X after you get your first couple of payouts.
Then you've got some data to look at as well.
Yeah. And then as far as, what you're doing right now, try to keep track of it on Excel. But also get in contact with me, join my Discord group. It's free.
Get those separate business accounts set up.
Yes, definitely. Get those business accounts set up. But yeah, I always love it when someone's like, oh, I only paid for my LLC out of my personal account and I waited. So I'm one of those people, like, as soon as I get my LLC paperwork, I'm like, bam, at the bank, getting my business account.
Nice and organized. I get it from a seller's perspective. There's so many things to think about when they're just getting set up. So hopefully they've watched this webinar and they'll know exactly how to set up the right way.
Oh yeah. And like I said, it can get overwhelming, and the last thing they want to think about is bookkeeping. They just want to dive in, start buying product, get it on there, start selling. But got to keep track of it.
That's right.
Because trust me, especially when it comes to cost of goods sold too, that's where it gets everyone.
Yeah, I bet. Awesome. Well, I think that's probably just about us. It looks like all the questions have been answered. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or like Michele said, join her Discord group and reach out to her. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Michele. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Of course. No worries. Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone.